In a small town in South Mississippi in 1955. Became a great female basketball player. At one time was the greatest in the United States. As a matter of fact, the New Orleans Jazz drafted Lucy, the first woman to be officially drafted by a men's basketball team. I don't know what else to say about her. She's retired now and living a happy life.
How would you know?
Because I'm Lucy.
You just saw a clip from The Queen of Basketball, an Academy Award-winning short documentary that tells the story of Lucy Harris, who was the first and only woman officially drafted into the NBA.
Joining us today all the way from LA is the Canadian director of this film, Ben Proudfoot. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Well, I'm sure you've heard this a million times by...
Good afternoon. Yes.
Ben, I'm sure you've heard a million times about how beautiful this documentary is, but I'm going to tell you one more time, it's beautiful. Tell us a bit about Lucy and what compelled you to make a film about her.
Yeah, so Lucy Harris, she was born in a very tiny town called Minter City in the Mississippi Delta in 1955. And she had an extraordinary talent as a basketball player and as a leader on her team. And the time when she sort of came of age was also a time when two major things were happening in the United States. The civil rights movement was integrating colleges, and Title IX, which was signed in 1972, which actually this Thursday represents 50 years exactly from when it was signed, gave her an opportunity to play on a women's basketball team at her local college, Delta State. And so she basically rose to be one of the first college basketball stars ever, and certainly the most prominent female college basketball star. And the film tracks her amazing story of being the first and only woman drafted into the NBA, leading her team to 3 national championships, all kinds of incredible achievements, scoring the first basket in Olympics history as a woman in Montreal in 1976. And then her story was basically forgotten for a long time in terms of like wide-scale recognition. And I was lucky enough to be turned on to her story by a colleague of mine, Haley, and that set off the last 2 years.
Okay, so tell us, because I think the audience got a little bit of a glimpse in that clip. What was it like meeting a living legend like Lucy?
It was an unforgettable experience. We filmed the film right in the middle of the pandemic. So it was just 2 of us, me and my cinematographer, producer Brandon, and I, in a minivan driving to Mississippi. It was uncanny. I mean, what was so unusual about the experience was that here you have one of the greatest athletes of all time, but nobody really knows who she is. And she's living in this little house on a normal street in the middle of the Mississippi Delta. And when she started talking about, the story and being drafted into the NBA and playing at Madison Square Garden and stuff, I felt both incredibly inspired and a giant responsibility to make sure that the story got told right, and that we close the gap the best we can between the respect she deserves and the fact that nobody really knew her name. And we just set off on a long journey, which we're still on, to make Lucy Harris a household name.
Well, the film won an Oscar for the Best Documentary Short this year, but sadly, Lucy passed away before the win. So what do you think it would have meant for her?
Well, it's hard to say. She wasn't big on awards. She really, I mean, that's part of what was so special about her that you see in the film is like, she was incredibly accomplished, but really her family was the most important thing to her. I think she would have been very, I think similar to when, the film premiered, she was touched by the experience. She felt recognized, that the world had not forgotten her, and that not only were her basketball chops worth a lot, but so was her story and storytelling. And I know that it meant a lot to her family and kind of helped cement her legacy as it should be, and not just something that a few people who knew, but something that really now millions of people know.
Well, NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal and Golden State Warriors point guard Stephen Curry came on board as the executive producers of the film. How did you react when they wanted to get involved with this project?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best possible news. Steph and Shaq just flanked Lucy and her story. I'm from Halifax. I don't play basketball. Anyone who knows me is like, what's Ben doing with this basketball story? But they recognize the power of her story. And it doesn't take a basketball expert to sort of recognize someone as singular and amazing as Miss Harris. And they were amazing, just cheerleaders for Lucy. And they saw the film and they said, how can we help? What can we do? We stand on her shoulders. Mm-hmm. How can we help, tell this story in a big way? And they both just stepped up to the plate. And of course, Steph just keeps on winning. So it's a golden year for him.
But you know what? The point of all of this is her legacy, and the point of legacy is to make an impact beyond your own time. So what is your hope for this film in initiating the conversation around the disparity towards female athletes?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, right? When just living my life outside, I'm not going to basketball games. I don't watch basketball, but I have heard the sentiment that the reason that, the WNBA, players don't make more money or what have you is because, people they're not as entertaining. People don't show up to watch the games. It's the market finding its, the value. And that always struck me as just plain old misogyny and doesn't make any sense. But I didn't know enough to really understand exactly how that all worked. And making this film, I really came to understand that, basically up until Title IX, like women's sports in the United States was almost, very little. There was no funding, no attention. The NBA has 50 years of a head start on the WNBA. The lowest paid NBA player still makes more than the highest paid WNBA player. And, it's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable, and it's clearly a reflection of entrenched sexism and misogyny, and the fact that we have this huge discrepancy in terms of what we've invested.
You said it perfectly.
Because like anything, it's about historically. And so it's not that the stories don't exist. It's not that Lucy Harris doesn't exist. It's that the stories haven't been told. We don't know the stories. They haven't been marketed to us. They haven't been printed in the newspaper. You said it perfectly, Ben. Thank you so much. We're about to go off air. Thank you so much. The film is The Queen of Basketball. It's on YouTube. Go check it out, everyone.